but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright.
Good morning, welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Tuesday morning, and Ross Gregory joins me for an hour of Newcastle United conversation, and always plenty to talk about, whether it's appointments in the boardroom, new signings, or a valuable point at Manchester United. We have always got something to talk about with Newcastle United, and whatever you want to ask in the chat as well, get your questions in. But first, we'll look back on the game, Ross. A valuable point. Not very often we can say that when we go to Old Trafford. A well-deserved point. Not very often we can say that when we go to Old Trafford. And potentially, with a bit more luck on our side, could have come away with all three, with Joe Linton hitting the bar in the post in quick succession, and Callum Wilson probably should have had a penalty. But all in all, even Stevens, I thought a point was a fair result. What was your take on it?
I agree. I thought the point was fair. I thought Newcastle were comfortably the better team in the first half, and there's not often you can say that about Newcastle at Old Trafford, where they can go and kind of almost dominate. You know, Man United were pretty much reduced to counter-attacking football and trying to hit on the break, and you know, Newcastle, I thought, were comfortably the better team. Like you say, with a little bit of luck, they should have gone in one or two maybe at half time. You know, Joe Linton's unlucky with the headers. You know, you can argue he could have done better maybe on the second one. Yes, he probably could have done, but he was unlucky on both headers. The Callum Wilson penalty incident was a stonewall penalty for me. Absolutely nailed on. I've gotten, you know, I'm still struggling to figure out how it wasn't given. So on another day they would have gone in maybe 1 or 2-0 up. I think it's still for all the good play in that first half. There still wasn't a great deal of what I'd call kind of clear cut golden opportunities created. There was some nice moments, but you know, De Gea didn't have to stretch himself too much. And you always had that feeling that second half, Man United would come out stronger, would come out having, you know, obviously changed things around a little bit tactically and got themselves a bit further up the pitch and pressed a bit better. And Newcastle struggled to get out of their own half. Certainly in the last 20 minutes, it wasn't backs to the wall, but was penned in a little bit. Man United were the better team in the second half, no doubt at all about that, and probably could have had a penalty themselves. You know, fortunately that Rashford header, as everybody I'm sure had their hearts in their mouths in that 95th minute, thinking, all right, here we go again, as that cross came in and he rose for the header. Fortunately went wrong side of the post, and I think that was justice done, because I think it would have been very, very harsh on Newcastle to come away without at least a point.
Manchester United up to their old tricks again, though, Ross. And I thought the days of this had been left behind. You know, rule changes are rule changes, surely. And surrounding the referees, only the one booking from this for Ronaldo, ludicrous, really.
It was, and he wasn't even booked for the protests. I think he was just booked for kind of ungentlemanly conduct with what he did on the free kick, nicking it off Nick Pope. Oh, let's be honest, I found it embarrassing from a Man United perspective, to be honest. The fact that this is what the once mighty Man United have been reduced to, kind of trying to pinch goals from you know, disputed free kicks and then surrounding the referee like that. I mean, they've always been quite aggressive like that, or they certainly were under the Alex Ferguson days. They're obviously a club that's in a little bit of transition, a little bit of turmoil. They're not where they want to be in the feeling the pressure. I thought the referee made some really odd decisions on Sunday, to be honest. But yeah, he got that one absolutely spot on. If you look at it from a wider picture, you got that decision spot on. But then it goes surrounding the referee. But that's what they're doing. And the one player in particular who does it is Bruno Fernandes. He's a right whinging, niggly. Just the word. I'm struggling to find words without resorting to expletives to describe him. He's just one of those obnoxious, niggly little players who's always at the ref, always whinging on, always falling over, always diving into tackles and making out he's the innocent party. Gets right on my nerves. He does, and he was the instigator for a lot of their behaviour on Sunday, I thought.
Yeah. News coming through from Eddie Howe's press conference prior to the Everton game. Alexander Isak is almost certain to be out until after the World Cup, but Alan St-Maximin will return, although Newcastle need to be careful with him given the recurring nature of his hamstring. So that's exclusive news just being broken live from the press conference. And disappointing that, Ross, because Isak made such an impression in that game against Liverpool with his goal and the one that was disallowed. Struggled after that because lack of quality around him, in up front, where he was forced to play a position that was strange to him and not much support, as I've already said. And of course, ASM, well, we've had this now since the lad arrived. He struggles with his hamstring, and we always have a period of the season where we have trips to France, and he seems to be missing in action. So it's a double blow for Newcastle. Slightly better news on the ASM, but yeah, disappointing nonetheless.
It is. It is. Start off with Isak. I think that's a real blow. You pay £60 million for a forward, somebody who you think is going to hopefully have a transformative effect on your front line. We know the issues that Newcastle have got in that department. I know scored 5 against Brentford and 4 against Fulham, and I know I'll get that, but there's still a lack of quality in some of the big games. I thought Sunday was a perfect example where played well but didn't really have that cutting edge. Really didn't really ever look like they were gonna score. I didn't think. Whereas if you've got an Isak, that's what you bought him in for. That's what you spent £60 million for. So for someone who can go to Anfield and score a screamer, or go to Old Trafford and produce that little bit of magic, a little bit of quality in the final third, that's going to get you turn a 0-0 draw into a 1-0 win. So I think that's a real blow. Especially it's for the lad as well, because he's come in and he did all right in his first couple of games, like you say. He needs to bed in. He has to have that bedding in process, and from to pick up an injury so early on in his career at Newcastle, the worry is how that's going to affect him kind of mentally, moving to a new club, moving to a new city, a new country, and then having to spend his time on the treatment table or just hanging around the place, not being able to get involved in training, not being able to mix in properly with the group. So yeah, it is a bit of a blow, and hopefully he comes back after the kind of the World Cup break, after that little mid-season break, and he comes back fully fit and fully firing. As for ASM, you're right. We've had this every season since he came. There's going to be periods where he's unfit. He's got niggles. He's got this or that. He's an explosive player, so he will pick up these kind of injuries. But it's just a little bit too regular for me. I know he's a fantastic player on his day, and he's someone who can unlock defenses. But it's no good when he's sitting in the treatment table or he's sitting on the subs bench. The club, I'm sure they all need to find a way of protecting him, of managing his injury situations and making him a little bit more robust. I think somebody who can play 35, 40 games a season without breaking down. That's what you want from your big game players. That's what you want from your talented, creative players who make the difference in games. So yeah, it's a blow, but you just have to get on with it and hopefully find different resolutions and different solutions out on the pitch with the players who are fit.
Yeah, just an additional part of that from Eddie Howe. He says, we don't think we'll see him back before the World Cup. Unfortunately, he's had a setback on his thigh. It's been very frustrating for him as a new player in the new league. I thought he was acclimatising well, and he picked up the injury with Sweden. So, of course, that is the latest on our star signing. Won't see him now until after the World Cup. So, a nice Christmas present for Newcastle fans will see the return of him, and hopefully playing alongside the likes of Bruno, Wilson, and of course ASM. Lots of questions coming in. I will come to them, guys. I've got a couple of other topics to discuss. And the appointment of Peter Silverstone was preempted a couple of weeks ago. We knew about it. And essentially, he's joined the club from One Football, who are the world's largest football media platform. He was the senior vice president of global development there, and he was responsible for their One Football club's leagues, federations and players network and partnership division. He brings to the table 2 decades of commercial experience in the football industry. That's going to be critical, of course, to delivering the club's ambitious commercial growth plans. And as has already been publicised, he spent 7 years at Arsenal Football Club, where he was chief commercial officer and also development director, and did very well there. In his time at Arsenal, he led several successful commercial initiatives, which included the onboarding and development of Arsenal's Adidas partnership. That's a partnership that I know a lot of Newcastle fans would love to see resurrected at Newcastle. And, of course, the signing and extension of Arsenal's sleeve partnership, which was with Visit Rwanda, if I remember correctly. He also saw the e-commerce business grow and was the one who signed the deal and signed on the dotted line for Arsenal's Amazon documentary, the All or Nothing documentary. He drove the wide commercial focus on the Arsenal women's team as well, which will be music to the ears of the women's team at St James's Park. And he also had the initiative to bring increased number of women matches to the Emirates, which again, we're seeing the women's team playing at St James's Park now. So from our perspective, it seems to be the right piece of the jigsaw at the right time. The quotes from Peter yesterday, he said, I'm delighted and honoured to join Newcastle United as the club embarks on this exciting journey to build a sustainable, leading Premier League and European club. Achieving that position will reward the unrivaled passion and loyalty of the incredible Newcastle fans. I'm committed to immersing myself in the heritage and culture of this giant club and the vibrant city of Newcastle, while building a leading and talented and diverse commercial operation that will deliver the commercial success vital to power the fans and the club's ambitious growth plans. Darren Eales welcomed him to the club by saying, "We are delighted to announce Peter Silverstone as the club's new CCO. After an extensive recruitment process, we are confident we found the right person to work with our team to deliver our commercial growth plans. He will be a key member of the club's executive team as we look forward to delivering on the club's commercial potential." So all that was quite long-winded, but I felt it needed to be said just to build the picture, because I know a lot of you won't have looked that up or heard it. But another monumental appointment off the pitch, Ross, and another piece in the jigsaw.
Absolutely, really, really impressive CV that he's got. Really impressive background, pedigree of working in football and working at the very, very top level in terms of commercial partnerships and commercial deals. Let's be honest, this is the one area that Newcastle have to get right, and the one area that's probably been the most. I mean, there's been a lot of areas neglected under the Mike Ashley era, but I think the commercial area, the commercial department, the commercial growth has not been given the attention and care and development that it should have done over the last 14, 15 years. That's one of the reasons why Newcastle are in the situation that they're in with finances and with financial fair play. If Newcastle can get this right, can get this commercial activity up and running or back up to the levels that at one point saw Newcastle one of the biggest drivers of commercial revenue within the Premier League, certainly above your Spurs and your Evertons and your West Hams and challenging your Arsenals and your Chelseas and teams like that. If we can get back up to those levels, then it makes the club a lot stronger. It means that more money can be spent on players, on transfers, on wages, on salaries to bring the best talent into the club. So Mr. Silverstone is going to have a really, really key role to play. I think it's another sign of the ambition of the club, that the realization that they know they have to nail elements behind the scenes. It's not all about what happens on the pitch. That's what you say on a Saturday or a Sunday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday. That's the kind of the the fruit of the labor, if you like, that goes on behind the scenes. But if you don't get that solid foundation, if you don't get things right behind the scenes, you're limited to what you can do, as we saw over the last 15 years with Mike Ashley. If you don't get the investment, if you don't get the structures and everything in place behind the scenes, then you can only do so much out on the pitch. It's all built on sand ultimately, and Newcastle needs really strong, solid foundations to help them push on and challenge on a regular basis. Your Liverpools, your Man Uniteds, your Arsenals, your Man Cities, your Spurs, and I'm sure this is just the start of it. You know, Darren Eales has been brought in, Peter Silverstone's been brought in, Dan Ashworth's in. I'm sure there'll be one or two more kind of key appointments on in the executive area, in the boardroom, which will help Newcastle become the force over a sustained period of time that we all think that the club can be.
Yeah, maximum quote here from Eddie Howe. He says, Maxi's got a very minor irritation to his hamstring, but it is the third time that's happened. Although it's a minor injury because of the recurrence, we might have to be careful with him, but we hope to see him before the World Cup break. Just giving you a few more quotes coming in as we speak from the press conference on Fabian Schär, because of course he went off injured. He said he's fine. He's been nursing a foot injury for a while now. He's managed it very well, but it's just reared its head towards the end of the Manchester United game. But I think he will be fine. And asked on John Joe Shelvey today, he says, we're continuing to work him very hard, but he's still in the early stages of coming back. We're building his load and building his training time, but he's looking really good. We just want to be careful in the latter stages of his injury. And on the defensive record, Newcastle, of course, holding the best defensive record in the Premiership at this moment in time. He said it's very pleasing. It's a compliment to the players, and we very much have the mindset here that we want to defend as a team, right from the strikers back to the goalkeeper, and you can see that in how we have played this season. So lots of positivity and lots of good sound bites coming out of the club. And another one that came out of the club yesterday was the new signing. And Diallo has joined Newcastle United. The 19-year-old is going to link up with the Newcastle United under-21 squad for the remainder of this season. And of course, he spent a little bit of time at West Ham, and I've got to be honest, don't know a great deal about him, other than he's highly rated, and West Ham devastated really to see him come up north.
It's an interesting one, this one. I don't know too much about the lad himself. I don't know if he was released by West Ham or if he left of his own volition. He never really made it at West Ham, so I'm a little bit kind of suspect on it. We'll just have to wait and see. Hopefully he comes up and he continues his development at Newcastle. He went on trial at Chelsea in the summer and didn't get a contract there. He went on trial at Derby County as well and played for them in pre-season and didn't get a deal there, or for whatever reason as well. So he's had to bide his time. He's come up and he's played for the 23s against Borough, I think it was, and he's obviously been training in around the academy with the players. And Newcastle decided to take a punt on him. So hopefully he can continue his development. Young players we all know young players can go through peaks and troughs. You can be great at 13, 14, 15, which Diallo, by all accounts, was a real prospect at that kind of age and was making waves in all the England teams alongside your Jude Bellinghams and people of that kind of pedigree. So he's certainly got the pedigree behind him. Maybe his career has just fallen away over the last couple of years, but let's hope he can come in and make his mark at the 23s and see how he gets on from there. Wish the lad all the best of luck.
Yeah, just another great young player coming into the club, and we've talked about this many times, but it's great to see that change in the Man Red. Let's just touch on John Joe Shelvey. It was a bit of a surprise to see him on the bench at the weekend. I think the ASM news had leaked in some way, shape or form prior to it, so it wasn't as much of a shock to see that there was no ASM at Old Trafford at the weekend. But Shelvey certainly sounds as if he's on the road to recovery and he's fit enough to be on the bench, Ross. It looks like we might see him sooner rather than later, and didn't think I would say this personally on this podcast very often, but that's good news.
It is. I'll hold my hands up as well. I've never been the biggest biggest fan of John Joe Shelvey. I think he's a very, very talented player, but he for me, too often in his Newcastle career, he's been inconsistent with his performances. Sometimes he's looked great, and then it's fallen away. He seemed to have had a new lease of life under Eddie Howe, and Eddie Howe clearly rates him. Having him back in the squad is fantastic news. I actually think that he would have been ideal in that second half at Old Trafford if he'd been a bit fitter, if he'd been further through his rehab and his recovery, because I felt that Newcastle struggled to retain possession in that second half and didn't really have the control of the midfield that they perhaps had in the first half. A couple of players looked a little bit leggy. I thought Bruno had probably one of his quieter games that I've seen him have since he came to Newcastle. Shelvey in there might have just been the right person to get his foot on the ball, start retaining possession, dictating the play a little bit more. But yeah, he's going to be managed. He's going to be managed carefully. He'll I don't see him starting games anytime soon. I think he'll have little bits and pieces of little cameos and little performances between now and again the World Cup break, because there's going to be a few games coming up. You've got the you might be looking at something like the Palace game in the League Cup on, I think it's the 9th of November. That might be a game that you can earmark John Joe Shelvey for a starting role. I think up until then it'll depend on injuries and fitness, but having him back in the squad and having him back as another option's great for Eddie Howe.
Yeah, any players coming in, it's a bonus. With the big blow that we've heard this morning, in case you haven't heard, is that Alexander Isak will be out certainly until after the World Cup, and ASM still injured, won't play against Everton, won't play against Spurs, treating his hamstring very, very carefully, but they do expect to see him before the World Cup. But only 5 games to go till the World Cup, 2 of them this week, so it's only 3 games, guys. We can build it up and make it sound deadly serious, and it is when you're missing star players. But after this week, there's only 3 games to go. One of them is a cup game, of course, at home to Crystal Palace. Joe Linton was back in the starting lineup, and it's all about squad rotation, and players go out through injury or illness. The good thing is they've got to fight to get their way back in. There's not that complacency where they go, oh, well, I can just, I'm not worried, I'll get my place back. And I know we're not strong up front. So, Wilson, is probably the one position where you think, well, he hasn't really got any massive pressure on him. But yeah, he came back into the midfield and did a solid job, didn't he?
He did, yeah. I thought he would. I thought, yeah, again, he was like everybody in the team. I thought he was very good in the first half. He got himself around the pitch. Broke up play as he does very well. Unlucky not to get himself on the score sheet. So yeah, I thought he was good in the first half. I thought he faded a little bit second half. Probably again a bit of lack of fitness or just a bit leggy in that. After coming back from an injury, but yeah, he's a massive player for Newcastle. With what he brings to that midfield 3, I still think there's more to come from him as that midfielder as he develops and understands the role a little bit more. But the partnership that he has with Bruno in there, and what he brings in terms of just physicality and strength and box to box fitness and his height, his all round presence. He's a massive player for Newcastle in that midfield, and I thought he had a solid return at Old Trafford on Sunday.
Yeah, I would agree. Ross, you took the words out of Michael Clark's mouth. You're doing a meatloaf live this morning. Kenny Ranson says Isak needs to be careful of getting hurt. I've had to change my dream team again. Kenny, this is it. Modern day problems when injuries to your team mean that you've got to move your dream team. I saw Trippier comment. I don't do any of that stuff, of course. And I saw Trippier commenting about his stats being great and, lots of people benefiting of having Kieran Trippier in the team. Let's get to some of your questions coming up the halfway mark now. Geordie Tune Life, I'll come to your Everton question before the end of the show because we will look ahead of the game. Mike Jens says, good morning, fellas. Time to bring Targett and Shelvey back into the first 11. We've spoken about John Joe, but let's talk about Matt Targett. I love this guy. I've got to be perfectly honest. He's my favourite player at the club at this moment in time, other than Bruno. I genuinely feel this guy is enhanced our back four. And we did talk about it last week on NUFC Matters. The press conference, he was asked the question, when do you think Mark Targett will get back in the team? And he said, well, look, he was ill at Fulham. And the last two results speak for themselves. The lads have come in, they've done a good job. And we've scored 9 goals and we've conceded 2. The weekend's performance won't have changed Eddie Howe's mind. A 0-0 draw, a clean sheet at Old Trafford, and ultimately Dan Burn and Sven Botman playing well, Sharp playing well, Trippier of course doing what he does. It's going to be difficult for Matt Targett to get back in, but the one thing that might stand in his favour this week, Ross, is 3 games in a week, and I think that will come into Eddie Howe's mind: recovery, performance. And we might see a couple of changes on Wednesday night, I guess.
I think we will. Yeah, I think we'll see a couple of changes tomorrow night. I think there'll be 1 or 2, not many, but 1 or 2, 1 or 2 changes, just to freshen things up a little bit. Matt Targett, I think, he's obviously been slightly unfortunate with the illness and the form and everything else that goes with it. I think for me, Newcastle's one weak area on Sunday was down that right side of Man United's attack, the left side of Newcastle's defence. Dan Burn is playing in there as a left back. He can play in there, and he does a really solid job. He's not a natural out and out left back, and I thought that he got turned and done a couple of times by Anthony out on that right wing, and picked up a booking early in the middle of the way through the first half, I think it was, and then Anthony got away a couple of times and just didn't have the quality to find the right ball, find the right cross, whatever. I'll be honest, I was shouting at the TV for Targett to come on in that second half. I thought I just had a feeling that Dan Burn was going to make an error or get himself sent off or whatever, and I just felt it needed Matt Targett to come into that left back area just to tighten up against Anthony a little bit. Obviously, he eventually did come on, and I wouldn't be surprised if he starts on Wednesday night. It's a great dilemma for Eddie Howe to have. He's got the meanest defence in the Premier League, and there's when was the last time we could say that? As followers of Newcastle United, when was the last time we could say that? At this point in the season, that the defensive record beats everybody else's. So he's got. There's obviously the players that have got the jersey of Dan Burns and Sven Botmans and so on and so forth are doing a fantastic job. But for me, I'd have Matt Targett back in on Wednesday.
Yeah, for me, it's it's going to happen. He's going to have a place at some point, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. John Justice Allen says, yes, Roger looks at talent, could be added to the first team pool when visa issues are sorted out. That's, in response, I guess, as well to Stephen Parker's thing here. Do you think Newcastle will try to keep the Aussie lad at the club instead of loaning him out? Looks a real talent, doesn't he? Looks a real talent, that Australian lad, Gual, and, talk of him potentially, making the first team sooner rather than later.
Yeah, did you see his goal at the weekend? Did you see?
Brilliant, absolutely outstanding.
Great strike. If you look at it properly as well, it kind of lifts up, the ball just bounces, and he has to readjust his technique to strike it. Just as it takes a bit of a bobble, but great strike. I think he will be loaned out. I think he'll still be, even regardless of whether the visa issues get sorted. I do think he'll be loaned out. I think it's probably the right next stage for his development. But you don't know. He's he could be in the Australia World Cup squad. So he'll be wanting to keep a close eye on how he fares there. He's obviously a player who's highly rated and he's got a lot of ability. It's a massive step up coming from the Australian League straight into the Premier League, and I think he will need a period of adjustment and acclimatization, whether that's at a club out on loan, maybe he's in Europe, in Belgium or Holland or somewhere like that, or whether he comes in and just works with the 23s. But it's he's obviously a talent. It was a fantastic goal at the weekend.
Mm-hmm. 100%, mate. Yeah, he's a very, very talented guy. Okay, halfway through the show, let me give a shout out to our sponsors. It's a big thank you to Skips and Bins. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free, and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Darren Baldwin Funerals again, 304 Old Durham Road, Gateshead. Telephone 0191 478 2730. Email Darren at darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk. or the website darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk. And thanks to Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD, hemp and cannabinoid specialists. You can find them at thejohd.com. Thanks to Phil Reid from 3 Properties, and you can find them at phil@3property.co.uk or by calling 07966 871 993. Thanks to Mr. Vickies.co.uk as well. Handmade sauces in Cumbria. You can phone orders in at 01768 210 102. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. Thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. If you want to subscribe, hit the subscription button down below and you can subscribe for free. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up. It's very important, folks. Hit the thumb up under the video to like the video. It helps us with the algorithm and helps build our channel. Click share. Share to a social media group like Facebook. If you're in a Newcastle group, share it to there. And that will help us grow as well. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes and Spotify if you're out and about, and you can listen to that on your devices or in the car. If you want to join the channel or make a donation, you can do that very easily by clicking join underneath and getting a membership. It's very cheap and well worth joining. And as well as that, you can also go over this QR code with your smartphone. And that will take you straight to the part of the website, NUFCmatters.com. And you can get a hat, a scarf, a cup, a pen, and a membership card, and entry into the monthly draw for a one-off fee of £25. We also give away a free car sticker if you're a subscriber. Simply email John at NUFCmatters.com to claim that. And we also support the food bank on here. The match day bucket is virtual, and you can find that at NUFC fansfoodbank.co.uk and make a donation today. The t-shirt, the Steve Howie t-shirt, which will be signed, is still up for grabs on my Twitter at Steve Wraith. Simply place a bid underneath the pinned tweet and you will be able to make a bid. The winner of that will be announced on the Three Amigos on Friday, which is at the later time of 6 o'clock, the original time actually of 6 o'clock until 8 o'clock. Okay, thanks to all the sponsors. Back to your questions. And Roger Cook just mentioning Fergie still involved at the weekend, hence the ongoing added time. Do you think that was a little psychological ploy by Manchester United at the start of that game to have Fergie on the pitch before we started?
He's still got a huge influence over the club, hasn't he? He's like that. I don't know. He still has a behind the scenes. I've been told he's still got a massive influence around the place as well, which I don't necessarily think is possibly the most healthy of relationships that you can have, especially when new managers are coming in and whatnot. But look, for all the jokes that we make and you know how much he wound opposition fans up and everything else like that, what a manager though over 25-30 year period. What a manager, and there'll probably not be one like him again, good or bad. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, there will not be many managers who have that influence that Ferguson had on referees, on players, on opposition teams, on rival managers, on the game as a whole.
Okay, next question from George. He says, what do you think of the new song we were singing? We've got Bruno in the middle. A lot of the other clubs sing this song with different words. Obviously, we need to get together and be more creative. Did you hear it?
I did. I just heard it on social. I just saw a few social media clips of lads on the bus going down or coming back up, singing it. I tend to agree with George, though. I think, yeah, you know, we've heard songs like this before, just with names changed and when words tweaked. You know, it'd be great to be a bit more creative and get your own songs and you know, own versions that other fans might want to copy off you, rather than just pinching somebody else's song and tweaking the words. So yeah, I do. I really agree with George on that one.
Okay, Geordie Toomba Life says, do you think Anderson will get a decent time on the pitch in this game as Spurs away will be a tougher test?
Might do, yeah, it's not a bad shout. I think, like we've said earlier, I think there will be some minor changes. One or two players might come in. I would be surprised. Well, I wouldn't be surprised, but I would be surprised at the same time, if that makes sense. If he keeps the same team, because it has done so well. But I do think it's a game where he needs to maybe rest one or two with the Spurs game ahead on Sunday. We're all crying out for Elliot Anderson to see a little bit more of him, to get him a little bit more game time to continue his development. He always looks a real prospect when he comes on, so it would be great to see a little bit more of him. But there's a lot of players on the fringes now who are knocking on the door. You know, Joe Willock obviously missed out on Sunday. Had a bit of illness during the week. Came off the bench. You know, Ryan Fraser is he going to come in possibly for Jacob Murphy at either tomorrow night or at the weekend? You've got Shelvey coming back to some sort of fitness. We've talked there about Matt Targett and one or two others. So there is a couple of those kind of fringe players who might be knocking on the door for a game, and Elliot Anderson might just have to bide his time a little bit more. But I think everybody would love to see a lot more of him over the next few weeks.
Okay, I think Anderson will get a chance at some point, but it's just going to be a long-term thing for him. You know, it's nurturing him like Man City did with Foden. You know what I mean? It's exactly that kind of thing for me, and I think he will feature as we go. But look, it's exciting to have young players coming through like that. John says, Ross, has the clear quality of Botman surprised you so early in his Toon career? And does he bring the best out of Shaw? I can't think of a better centre-back partnership in the Premier League at the moment. I mean, Botman has just matured very, very quickly, hasn't he?
He's impressed me. He has impressed me. I'll be honest, I wasn't sure on the signing, not in terms of his quality. I thought he might need a little bit of a time to adapt to the pace and the physicality and just everything else that goes with the Premier League. You know, you can be a great player in the French league or the Dutch league or elsewhere, but the Premier League, I'm not saying it's the best league in the world, but it's got certain unique characteristics that make it very, very difficult at times for players coming in from abroad, particularly defenders and up against some of the best strikers in the world. He struggled a little bit against. The only game I've really seen him struggle too much against was obviously Man City, but he's up against Haaland, who's arguably the best player in the world at the minute. Forget about Benzema winning the Ballon d'Or. I think Haaland's going to dominate that for the next few years. And he struggled a little bit against him, but then every defender in the world is going to struggle against Erling Haaland at the minute. So he's been really impressive. He's decent on the ball. He brings a bit of composure. Him and Fabian Schär have struck up a really, really good relationship at the minute, and long may it continue. I think Eddie Howe's been very, very canny with Botman. He dipped him in, dipped him out, brought him back in, left him out for a couple of games, just to help him find his feet. But if he continues with the kind of start and the progress that he's made so far, he could be a massive, massive asset for Newcastle over the next 5 to 10 years even.
Yeah, for me, it's unknown to me to have so many good defenders at the club at one time, and that's clearly been part of Eddie Howe's and the club's plan, and it's worked fantastically well. We've already touched on Targett. Botman's been superb. Trippier, of course, coming in and being the catalyst to this kind of success, and Fabian Schär was part of the old guard and seemed to be on his way out, but has done well. And Dan Burn, a local lad, making good. It's fantastic. Tom says, Botman's really impressed me. He looks solid at the back and looks like he has settled in nicely. Roger says, Botman is class. It's fantastic. It's great to see that. Kenny, good morning. He says, what do you make of the free kick scenario where Ronaldo took the ball and put it in the net, Ross?
I thought it was embarrassing for Man United, embarrassing for Ronaldo to be trying these little tricks, these little snidey little tactics. just a mark of where the club's at, Man United's at, if they're trying to do little things like this to steal an advantage in terms of the actual laws of the game and everything else like that. The referee clearly had his arm still raised to indicate an indirect free kick, clearly raised and clearly indicating that the free kick hadn't been taken. If you notice his position, he stood there with his arm raised close to the halfway line. Fabian Schär's touched the ball back to Nick Pope to take the free kick. It's as simple as that. Referee hasn't indicated that the free kick's been taken. So right decision by the referee to say no goal. Right decision by the referee to book Ronaldo for being an idiot. And we move on. Load of fuss over nonsense, over nothing. Just Man United fans getting their knickers in a twist about it. But yeah, right decision. Just pathetic, really, I thought.
Tom says, in January, do you think we should go and get another striker, just so there's more options for Eddie Howe?
Yeah, I think they should. I think they should, and I think they will look at available options in January. January, though, is, and I've said this a million times before, it's a tricky market to get the right players in. Did very, very well last January, obviously bringing in the 5 signings that they did, but it's hard enough getting quality attacking talent in the summer. Never mind in January. Who's going to be available? Why are they available in January? I think it'll be very difficult to get somebody in of the quality that they want in January, but they will certainly be looking, and if that right person becomes available, then hopefully they're in a position to move and secure the transfer.
The free kick debacle just shows how desperate Ronaldo and Manchester United have become, says Chris Banks. Alan Thompson says, since I was a kid, lad, strikers win your matches, defenders win you titles. Great assessment of the situation there. John says, if we have a very good January window, is a top 4 finish out of the question? It's interesting. We've discussed this. We had a Man United fan on last night, Melly Barnes. The question I posed last night was, after the weekend's game, who's going to finish higher, Newcastle or Manchester United? And that was split really between everybody on there. I believe we can. I do believe we can finish ahead of them. I think a top 4 finish is out of the question, but I do think a top six finish is possible. The way things seem to be panning out with the rest of the Premier League, and if Newcastle can just, as we've mentioned, bring in that another piece of the jigsaw in January, why not? You get that little bit of luck with injuries and suspensions, and Bob's your uncle. You're suddenly in the top 6 again. Yeah,
it's a long season, isn't it? And we've seen recently teams that have challenged for that kind of top 4, top 5, top 6 position, who is kind of slight outsiders who've just fallen away at that last hurdle, that last month of the season when it starts getting a little bit squeaky bum time, to quote Mr. Ferguson again. It becomes, how's your squad, what's the depth of your squad, what's the depth of players in there and quality in there. So we've seen Leicester fall away, we've seen West Ham fall away, you've seen, you saw what happened with Arsenal last season because of them not having the kind of mentality or the strength and depth towards the end of the season. At top 4, no chance for me. I think I think you're pretty much nailed on now with Arsenal, Man City, Spurs, Chelsea, and maybe Liverpool pushing back into that. So I think that your top 4 will come from that. Can Newcastle finish above Man United? I think that's not beyond the realms of possibility. I don't think that's a particularly strong or great Man United team. They might get better the more that they play under Ten Hag and they get used to his methods. But they're not a great team. That strike force is bang average for me. Martial is leading the line when he's fit. Dear me, he was on his way out a few years ago. Ronaldo's not the player that he was. Marcus Rashford's found a little bit of form recently, but none of them are in particularly great form, and defensively they look a little bit suspect as well. So look, I think for Newcastle, the aim should be top 8 after the start of the season that they've had. I think it's great season and good progress would be top 8. Anything on top of that is a bit of a bonus. If they bring the right players in January, you never know. But I still think Newcastle are a little bit light in a couple of key areas, or a little bit lacking in top quality in a couple of key areas. I'll probably see them maybe finish that top 8, but maybe miss out on a top 6 finish.
Yeah, interesting to even be talking about those kind of things this season. It's absolutely fantastic. Trossard has been linked this morning, says Alan Thompson. Stephen Parker says Trossard will be a good signing. Roger agrees. Trossard, he would be a good signing, wouldn't he?
He would be, yeah. He's banging form. He's one of the most informed players in the Premier League in his position. This season would be fantastic signing. I don't know how much truth there is in that, but they're the type of players I think Newcastle should be looking to target. Is your players who are it's kind of clubs like Brighton, like Leicester with Maddison, like I don't know, them sort of mid-table kind of Premier League teams, trying to take some of their best players, their best quality. You will have to pay a bit of a premium for them, but yeah, Trossard's had a fantastic start of the season.
Jody Toombalay says, in January, I can see you signing another good midfield player, but not a striker, because teams just don't sell strikers at this time of year unless you pay well over the odds. We won't do that. They do sell them if they're going to be out of contract in the summer, and they're going to go for free in the summer. So that's what you need to look at, I guess. And I'm sure Newcastle United will have already done that. Stephen Parker says, the players look so together. No douchebags, I love that, in the dressing room or training. An outstanding backroom team with owners to match onwards and upwards. Very, very positive. Paul, thanks for doing that, mate. Thanks for sharing it. Internationals, says Roger. I'm not sure what that's about. Trossard's contract is up next summer. Oh, well, there we go, Chris. And that was just purely off the top of my head. So, yeah, there you go. That would be a real bargain. And that is a problem. That is a problem when players are up for free in the summer. That will certainly mean that Trossard will be available, I would imagine. We can push for top 4 after the World Cup and the run into May, Ross, with new recruitment, says Paul. Yeah, I mean, God, that would be a bargain if we can get Trossard. And I think just got to remember, keep our feet on the ground, Ross, haven't we? It is easy to get carried away. We're all excited, and the world is our oyster. But let's just look at it and just enjoy the ride, like we keep saying on here.
Oh, absolutely. Look, the fact that we're having these conversations and people are talking about signing this player or that player, or pushing for top 4, pushing for Europe, pushing to finish above Man United. Coming away from Old Trafford after a 0-0 draw, a little slightly disappointed that you haven't taken all 3 points. Talking about signing Belgian internationals and England internationals and so on and so forth. It's conversations that just over a year ago, we wouldn't have dreamed of having. The positivity and the ambition around the club is fantastic. It's a great ride. We don't know where it'll end, but let's enjoy the ride while we can, because we've had enough dark and dismal and unambition around the club that it's a positive time. So why not dream big? Why not think big? But with that kind of dose of realism that it's going to be a bit of a journey to get there. I think Newcastle is still miles away from the top 4. I really do, consistently in terms of the top 4. Simply because you might be able to challenge on a one-off basis, like Leicester have done and West Ham have done, and so on and so forth, like I've mentioned. But doing it consistently over a period of seasons, you need that recruitment, you need that investment, you need that infrastructure behind the club. That comes from the commercial activity, comes from regularly doing this season in, season out. You've seen West Ham have a tough start of this season. You've seen Leicester have a tough start of the season after a couple of really great years. So doing it consistently is what the club are going to be aiming for, and that's going to take a little bit of time, I think.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Yeah, apologies for putting that up. Russ, what is our ceiling? Klopp wants our ceiling to be mid-table. What is our ceiling?
I hope at the end of the season we're all dancing on the ceiling a bit Lionel Richie-esque, and see what Mr. Klopp's reaction is to that. I think I agree with him to an extent. I understood what he was saying about there not being a ceiling in terms of investment. He's wrong in the sense that at the minute with FFP, and I know it's a thorny subject for people and people don't like necessarily talking about it, but with FFP, Newcastle do have a ceiling. They can't at this minute just go out and spend 200 million every transfer window or every summer, because they haven't got the commercial revenue to back that up. It becomes unsustainable. It becomes it just does, the numbers don't work. It works for Man City at the minute because they've got massive commercial activity going, so they don't have a ceiling really. They can go out and spend 100 million on a Jack Grealish, and if that doesn't work, they can probably go out and spend another 80 million in January or next summer. You know, Newcastle haven't got that luxury yet. But if the club get everything right off the pitch over the next 5 years, then there is going to be a lot of wiggle room for Newcastle if they can get that commercial activity, get that revenue, those revenue numbers moving in the right direction, and up to somewhere like what, you know, the amount of money that Arsenal and Spurs and other clubs can bring in. Maybe it's not your Man Uniteds and whatnot because of their kind of global reach, but over the next 5 or 10 years, if you can get those commercial revenues moving, then Newcastle are going to be in a really, really strong position. And I can understand why someone like Klopp is worried, because he can see with the potential that Newcastle have got. So ceiling, I don't know. It depends. I think it depends a lot on what happens in the background and off the pitch. Will determine, you know, how far Newcastle can go on the pitch.
Yeah, you should always aim higher than your intended projected targets. As Stephen Dan says, my ceiling's got some weird old pattern on it. I kind of like it. All this talk about ceilings has made the buzzword of the week. I think you are right. Paul says, Ross, we suffered years with Mike Ashley. Our time for better times is higher in the Premier League and beyond. Excited for future seasons. Luke Shaw linked to us. Some fans don't rate him, but if we sign him, they'll realise how good he is. I remember David Batty signing, and fans didn't rate him, but wow, they changed their mind quickly. Chris says, what if Klopp doesn't watch his blood pressure? They'll be scraping him off the ceiling. Dan says, my only issue with Shaw is injuries and age. Stephen says, does financial fair play affect building of academies, grounds and youth teams? Don't know, mate. I'd have to recap on the programme I did with Ben Jacobs, but I think
that there used to be again, I'm a little bit fuzzy on some of the details. You used to get a part of the money that if you put it into your ground development or your academy or certain infrastructure like that, it wasn't counted towards FFP. But I think they've changed the rules over the last couple of 3 years, and that some of that money that it is included now in your FFP projections.
Yeah, okay. And Newcastle at home to Everton, and they attempt to extend the unbeaten home record this season to 6 games. Frank Lampard, of course, bringing the Toffees up here for a 7:30 kickoff, and it is live in the UK on Amazon Prime Video. Super Mac will be at the Dog and Parrot at 6:15 and 10:30, and Gibbo will be joined by Lee Clark in the big market from 6 o'clock at Pumphrey's tomorrow night. We've already heard Newcastle United's injury situation. Referee is Tony Harrington. That's an easy trip up the A19 for him. He last took over a Newcastle game with a 1-0 win over Crystal Palace in April. And on VAR, Andre Mariner. I'm just going to go to the couple of questions that were asked as well. Geordie Toonvalley says, good morning, lads. I don't see the Everton game being a classic, as they will play defensive football, but have we learned anything from Bournemouth and Palace games? Hopefully we have. And Roger says, threat real from Wood tomorrow night. So yeah, look, big game this. After a 0-0 at Old Trafford and coming back with a point, you really want 3 points against Everton, don't you?
You do, especially ahead of good question there from John as well about 3 points from the next 2 games. I agree. I think if you'd gone into this run of 3 games, Man United away, Everton at home, Spurs away, I think you would have said 4 points from those 3 games would probably be a decent return. Yes, you want to win every game or certainly not get beat, but A draw at Old Trafford, good result. The win on Wednesday night would be excellent as well, and it sets you up for a trip to Spurs. But I think it's going to be a difficult game tomorrow night. I really do. I think Everton are in a different place than what they were at the end of last season, or certainly the last time Newcastle played them at St James's. They were a lot tighter and more resilient defensively with the combination of Tarkowski and Connor Cody, which, by the way, is a hell of a sight. And I think I said it at the time when Everton managed to get him from Wolves on loan for a season. Connor Cody's a player I really do rate highly. So they're a lot more resilient and tighter defensively than what they have been, and they've got a couple of players coming back. Calvert-Lewin was on the bench at the weekend and got a bit of a run out. And Frank Lampard's got them a bit better organised and a bit harder to beat. So I might be wrong, but I don't see it being a high scoring 2-3, 4-0 kind of win. I think it might be a one where Newcastle have to be patient and try to break down the Everton defence like what they had to do against Palace and came up a little bit short in your Bournemouth and so on and so forth. I think it's going to be a tough night, but you would hope that with the home backing under the lights at St James's, it'll be a good atmosphere. I'm sure of that. It always is against Everton for various different reasons. It's always a good atmosphere, and that the kind of the mood and the form and the confidence that the team's in, it'll take them to 3 points.
Prediction?
I'm going to go 1-0. I think it's going to be really, really tight. I'll go for a 1-0 win, and it might be a Callum Wilson or a Joe Willett goal or something like that later on. But yeah, I think I'm going to go 1-0.
Okay, and it's an anniversary of such today. 30 years since this beauty, Ross. Liam O'Brien over the wall. What a classic! What a classic goal that was. Memories of that, Ross?
So my memory of that was at the time I was signed on schoolboy forms for Notts County. So I was down Notts County at the weekend. I used to go down on weekends and whatever. So I was in digs outside at Notts County and had it on the radio. Didn't have it on the TV or anything else like that. I don't know if it was live on the telly, but yeah, listening to it on the radio with a couple of other Geordies in the and Mackham actually in the digs down in Nottingham, and then seeing the highlights of it afterwards. But yeah, that's my memory of the goal when it went in. Fantastic free kick, and it's gone down in folklore for Newcastle fans, hasn't it?
Oh, it certainly has, mate. Absolutely brilliant. Great memories. I was there. If you can see the centre section just behind the goalkeeper there, I was right down at the bottom for that goal. Absolutely brilliant. Great day to be a Newcastle fan. And special memories for Liam O'Brien, who, no surprise, doesn't have to buy a Guinness at all when he's back on home territory, as he calls it, in Newcastle. Great stuff. Tom Dixon says, great show today, lads. Take care, everyone. Don't forget to hit the likes button and subscribe to the podcast. I couldn't have said better myself. Ross, look forward to seeing you next week, mate. Until then, take care, mate. Have a good week.
You too. Thanks, everyone.